John, we're joined by somebody we really enjoyed covering when he was in New York, and we enjoy covering still now, Jameson Taillon.
Yep, fantastic guy, outstanding pitcher. He's having a good year. There were a lot of trade rumors about him, and I was in touch with him throughout. And he didn't know what it was happening. He had a 10-team no trade list, not to Yankees or Mets, so he could have come here, but didn't end up happening. He's still with the Cubs. They still have a chance, and so there's a lot to talk to him about.
Yeah, and post-trade deadline, John, we're going to talk about where are the super teams? How do the Mets set up for the wild card? Are the Yankees going to fully take advantage of the greatness of Soto and Judge? We'll play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, I want to hit you with something that I've been thinking about a lot. As I think we all thought that the NL wild card was going to be three teams open, but Arizona and San Diego have kind of sprinted. They're 14 games over 500, two of them. They're pressing the Dodgers a little bit. We think of this as a copycat sport. If the Padres actually figure a way into the playoffs, they win the division, they win a couple of rounds. You think anybody else's mind will be changed in 29 other shops and say, hey, instead of holding on to our prospects like they're gold during wartime, why don't we use them to go get good established players?
No, I don't think so.
I agree with you.
I think AJ Preller stands alone. He's the one of a kind, and it's a gamble. You don't want to come back and you traded to Max Scherzer or whomever, and have that be part of your legacy. So I think they are great jobs if you don't mind working 24 hours a day. They're great in terms of the pay, and guys don't want to give them up. And if don't rock the boat and just do a fine job, you'll keep your job. So it takes a gambling man, and there just aren't that many of them around.
Yeah, I think, correct me if you think I'm wrong, John. I think there's like four who operate a little differently than others. Preller more than
Mhm.
anybody. Dave Dombrowski in Philadelphia is willing to go for it. I think the Astros under Jim Crane have shown they'll do what they have to just try to extend the good times. And I think Alex Anthopoulos in Atlanta, is a go early, get what I want, not care what the industry thinks about it kind
Yeah,
of guy. And by the way, I think we're talking about generally very successful guys who are zagging when everyone else is doing the conservative. Oh, I love your move. You got 3.2 worth of value, and the other team only got 2.9.
right.
Congratulations. You finished last again, but you're number one on Baseball Prospectus's prospect list. I admire the guys who are going after what's actually valuable, which is to
Yeah,
win. And I know the argument is always, well, you're destroying tomorrow. I don't know. Like Preller keeps
yeah,
finding new prospects. The Atlanta has won the division 6 years in a row.
right,
The Astros have been to the ALCS 7 years in a row. Dave Dombrowski is about the most successful executive in the sport over the last 30 years.
right.
I wonder why more people don't say the true value of the sport. It's hard to play Major League Baseball. Most prospects aren't going to be very good. Let's go for it.
Yeah, I mean, Dombrowski, he's his ticket punch to the Hall of Fame, but he was always like that. He was always willing to make that move to try to win the World Series. And, when he became a seller, he was an aggressive seller when he was with the Marlins, 25 years ago, whatever that was, or more. So, yeah, I agree. I like it. I wish there were more guys like that. I think Houston, I mean, they got killed for sending three prospects for Yusei Kikuchi, but they thought they could get more out of Kikuchi than he was doing with Toronto, and they so far are proven right. I don't think any of those prospects are going to be the next, Bagwell or Biggio. I think they're fine. They're major leaguers. All of them are major leaguers. So they certainly were willing to give up more, and give them credit. It's interesting that was the deep analytics team, right? When they had Jeff
Yeah.
Luno, and now they have Reggie and Jeff Bagwell and people like that advising them, and they're a little different. And obviously they had Dusty Baker for a while. Maybe he would have stayed on longer if he knew that they were going to go further away from the analytics. But yeah, you're right. Those four teams, and I like it. I like the way they operate.
Yeah, I would point out both under the previous Jeff Lunau and now under Data Brown, they've traded, I think, six prospects for Justin Verlander, got killed on both trades, and won both. I mean, we'll see how Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford turned out. But
Yeah,
if the Mets went out in the marketplace this year with Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford, how much would they have gotten? I mean, a year
Yeah.
later, something, but not, it's hard to play Major League Baseball. Can I stick with the Mets a second, just because of where we started here, John? The fact that the Padres and the Diamondbacks have run here, it does feel like there's only one spot open
Yep.
now.
Agreed.
In
Yep.
in what we thought the whole time was going to do it, and there's a traffic jam there. Atlanta, as we're speaking, 62 and 56, Mets 61 and 57, St. Louis 60 and 59, Giants 61 and 60, and the Cubs 59 and 61. I got to the Cubs because Jameson Taillon's our guest a little later,
Right.
and I wanted to see just where the Cubs were, so I wrote it down. Where, are the Mets good enough now to win what is a 2-4, at least a 5 or 6 team, a 1/4 of the season sprint to the finish line?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's Arizona and San Diego. I think they will get in. So, it's that one spot that's left. And interestingly enough, the Braves are the ones holding it right now with all the injuries and ailments they've had. They're still hanging in there. Good for them that they've been able to do that. But the Mets, they got to beat Atlanta. And to me, that's the key. Yeah, sure, the Cubs have a shot, the Giants, the Cardinals. I think we can probably count the Pirates at this point. Reds probably a little young. I think it's great that there are a lot of teams that still have hope, but from my perspective, it's the Mets. They got to beat out the Braves, and they. I'm going to say that the last series in Seattle was an aberration. Tough road trip, Anaheim to St. Louis to Colorado to Seattle, and to play in the shadows in Seattle and those great pitchers and that tough ballpark after Coors Field. So I'm going to say that's an aberration. And, I've been on the Mets and saying that they're going to be a playoff team, but they got to fight right now. They got to do better than they've done recently, and they've got to start beating better teams. And right now you've got Oakland and the Marlins coming in, and it's time to make hay and maybe get that lead.
Yeah, you see the shame of, look, Seattle still might win the AL West. I think that's going to be the only way for an AL West team to get in. I'm going to take Houston's DNA that they know how to close. But you saw over the weekend, if Seattle ever figured out a way to get in because they have a better offense, the starting pitching is dynamic. And we didn't even
Yeah.
see Kirby, who might be the best of the group, in that series, how they dominated the Mets. John, let's flip over to the Yankees. I was at all 3 games over the weekend against the Rangers. Subsequently, they somehow lost a game to the Chicago White Sox, which seems to happen every Haley's Comet or so. Um, it made me write on our Post Plus today. I kind of did a little deep dive into why are there no good teams? Like the Yankees, there were, I think, 4 or 5 teams going into yesterday who were on track for 95 wins. We haven't had a season without a 600 winning percentage in a decade. And that's kind of where we're going. Look, the Dodgers traditionally get hot about now and then sprint and get good. So maybe somebody will get to 100 and say a 600 winning percentage. But watching the Yankees over the weekend is just a reminder. They really have a lot of problems. I don't think they have any kind, and I'll tell you the number one is traditionally, historically, over the last decade or so, their bullpen is very good. I think they have no trust in anyone in their bullpen, or shouldn't have any trust, and they have no true lineup of how to get from starter to 27th out. And I'm not sure, like maybe you could throw Luis Gil into it if and when Clark Schmidt comes back. Maybe you could throw Clark Schmidt into it. Do you think Will Warren's arm would play up a little if they threw him in? But what a Hail Mary that might be. It's interesting after really having good bullpens for a while. I'm not sure the Yankees are going to have good ways to get the last 9 to 12 outs of the biggest games of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there are no super teams. I think partly teams feel like if you get in, you can win. The last 2 NL winners, the pennant winners, were number 6 seeds, third wild card teams. So that might be something. But look, the Dodgers seem to go for it, right? They signed Ohtani and Yamamoto. They wanted to be a super team and just haven't done it. I mean, this might be their lowest win total in a while at this point. And the Phillies, they looked unbeatable for more than half the season, and now they've fallen down. Orioles, they've had a lot of injuries, and the Yankees in that mix as well. I mean, the Guardians are hanging right there with the other 4, which is shocking.
And the
Give them
Brewers, the
credit.
Brewers are kind of have a
Yeah,
similar record. Also, you have like You have like six teams between
Nobody great.
like a
Yeah.
94 and 95. And to your point, John, I think it could open it up for like, hey, if you end up being that last wild card in the National League, are you really going to feel that there's anyone you can't beat in a series? These teams are flawed. When I dug down in it, John, I don't think there's ever a singular reason for anything. But the four teams I think we saw play great at some point and had resources, et cetera, because of prospect depth or money, the Orioles, the Dodgers, the Phillies, and the Yankees. When their starting pitching kind of hit a wall, they all died a little bit. The
Yeah.
Dodgers, for example, just went through a period in 33 games. They started 11 different guys. Like,
I mean, they
and
just have a lot of guys who are great talents who frequently get injured at this stage. I mean, Kershaw obviously didn't for years and years, but now that he's in his mid 30s, he's getting hurt. Glass now has been that guy who's never thrown more than 125 innings. Yamamoto, just coming over from Japan, obviously suffered a relatively serious injury. They're hoping to get him back. So they get a number of great talents with injury uh, possibilities and realities at this point. So, I think some of these teams, the Orioles could have been better if Rodriguez and Bradish had stayed healthy. Phillies are the one that really surprises
yeah,
me
me
because
too.
they're not unhealthy. They did some good pickups. They had that clubhouse that seemed to be way together. They have Harper and they got stars all over the diamond. Bohm and Stott have become very good players. They got Trey Turner, Schwarber. Obviously, Real Muto was out a little while, but I mean, they don't really have an injury excuse. They don't, not like the Dodgers or Orioles. I thought they'd be much better than this, but at this point, you're right. Everybody's heading for 95 wins, nobody for 100.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I thought the Phillies were the kind of like best to 1 to 20, 1 to 22 talent where they didn't have real holes and it would be hard for them to have sustained periods of bad ball. But they're in about a 5 week period now where only the White Sox have a worse record than them. It's stunning to me because I really believe in their kind of culture, in their talent, and I've been surprised by them. John, as
And
a way
the right and
to,
the rotation. I mean,
yeah.
they got four really good starters at
Well,
least.
Suarez
Not
has
even
been on the IL with a back. I think he's coming back
yeah.
soon. And kind of Christopher Sanchez seemed to hit a little bit of a wall. I think that's part of the problem is we don't train guys to run the marathon, and then we say, "Hey, why don't you go run a marathon?"
Yeah, it's
And
all
I
about
think,
velocity. All
yeah,
about velocity. Yeah.
grip it and rip it. John, before we get out of this first block here, I do want to talk about one player. And it's an easy player to talk about in a lot of ways, and it's Aaron Judge. Again, I was there for 27 innings over the weekend. I was at a couple of games against the Blue Jays where they just kept walking him. It's hard to believe this, but we watch it day to day. He had 62 homers a couple of years ago. He's a much better offensive player now. It's a
He's a
hard sentence to actually say. I know you talked to Reggie. This is what I want to talk to you about a little. And I'm going to do the basketball analogy that I know everyone in the world hates except for me. He feels like he's made a transition that I feel like LeBron made in his career, which was it was extraordinary talent that was performing at MVP levels. But then there seemed to be this about 7, 8. They beat the Celtics at a big point in the playoffs where the Celtics had still had Pierce and Garnett and guys like that. And it seemed to like bring this, oh, I know how to do this now. And to grade the talent at the highest level, there was suddenly control. The control of each at bat by Judge now is so great. Like you never feel the pitcher has any advantage over him. He has cut down his strikeouts some, but even when he strikes out, you feel like he's in control of the bat in a way I don't believe he even was 2 years ago when he hit. I can't believe I'm saying
yeah.
this. 62 homers.
Yeah, he's having
The
a better year. Yeah, there's no
the
question.
I mean, without Bobby Witt, he's the Triple Crown winner this year. And
Right.
so I just want to throw it out because I know you wrote about it. You did a smart thing. You got Reggie. So tell me your thoughts.
Well, Reggie said he's in the realm of Ruth and Gehrig, so that's been the high praise from Reggie. He didn't put himself in there, and rightfully so. And I think he's correct. I mean, he's the only guy who's now going to be over a 200 OPS plus twice in the last 50 years, right? He did 210 OPS plus, which means he's more than twice as good as your average hitter. And it looks like he's 100 times as good to me, but that's how the statistic goes. 210 in 2022. and he's at 219 now, so he's gonna be over 200 twice. In the last 50 years, the only other guy to do that without steroid help was George Brett in 1980 when he was going for 400 and he was incredible and hitting triples and all this all over the place and had an amazing season. And he was 203. So those are the only three guys. Or three times that it's been over 200. Now Bonds did it obviously, and then in a shortened season, Soto in 2020 with the pandemic, he was over the 200, and then the strike shortened year, which wasn't shortened by that much, but enough that it wasn't a full 162 game slate. Yes, Frank Thomas and Jeff Bagwell did it, but take out those guys in the shortened seasons and all of the steroid guys, which include Sosa and McGuire, along with Bonds many times. That 200 OPS plus is an amazing, amazing season. And you're right, this year is better, and I think that's a good stat. I think it's a little better, 219 versus 210, and they don't know what to do with them. It's pretty amazing. I give the White Sox credit; they pitched around them good enough, I guess.
Yeah, look, John, I'll say this is one of the blessings of doing what we do is we cover two teams, so there's a game in town every night, and we cover especially the Yankees historically, but more and more the Mets. We see a lot of great players come here. So I've seen unbelievable seasons by Piazza, seen unbelievable seasons by A-Rod. I actually think the third best season I've ever seen an offensive player have from kind of beginning to end is Juan Soto. And it's behind two. Like, it's hard to have a better offensive year than Juan Soto is having at the plate. And he's having a not as good a year as the guy who's hitting behind him. It's stunning. And I'll end the segment by just saying this. The pressure on the Yankees to capitalize on that is extreme. It's right. They do, to your and Reggie's point, they do have Ruth and Gehrig. When you have Ruth and Gehrig, you better do some winning at the highest level.
Right. It's for 1 year. It's guaranteed. We'll see. Yeah. I mean, obviously, they hope to bring Soto back, and I think they have a good chance. We'll see if they actually do it. But, yeah, the Soto year is incredible. He's got over 1,000 OPS. Judge is around 1150. This is a year where the average OPS is around 710. So if you're over 1,000, that's pretty good. I think only Ohtani, Soto, and Judge are over 1,000 as we're doing this. And I give Judge a little extra points. Oh, first of all, he got off to a terrible start, had a 750 OPS through April. But beyond that, I know that Wells was doing well behind him, and now they have Stanton back. But they weren't getting a ton out of cleanup for basically half the season. And, Soto does have Judge behind him. So that is a plus, as Soto readily admits. So he does have that kind of advantage. Judge is on another planet. He really is. Soto, incredible. You might be right. It might be the third best. I'd have to look at A-Rod's final year before, not final, the year when he had the opt-out. He had 50-something home runs and 140 or 50 RBIs. Pretty good. But, as we know now, he wasn't 100% on the up and up. And so... Yeah, I threw out the Bonds and McGuire and Sosa ones because, they had help. Let's be fair.
Yeah. It just stands out to me what you say. Nobody hit behind him for 3 months, and somehow only 2 weeks ago, managers remembered they could intentionally walk him. Amazing. And this is supposed to be the brilliant era of baseball, whatever.
Right. It was Mendoza, I think, was one of the ones who started it, a guy who knows
super geniuses.
The best, Yeah.
Well, one person we know is very smart pitcher, smart guy, great guy, Jameson Taillon. He's going to join us next on the show. John and I are so thankful and appreciative to be joined by Cubs right-hander Jameson Taillon, 8-6, 3.50 ERA on the season, having another strong year with the Cubs. And look, I think the place to start is we're just post-trade deadline, and I don't know that folks fully appreciate what it feels like to be in the storm, where your name is coming up quite as much as your name came up, which is good news, means you're desired, you're having a good year, you're healthy, people want you. On the other hand, you probably have established life someplace, comfort. Take us through the storm, and did you think you were going someplace?
Yeah, it's definitely a little interesting. I remember being in the minor leagues and maybe being thrown around in some trade talks back in the day. But since then, I've never had to deal with in-season stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely different. It's definitely nice to be wanted on one hand, and then on the other hand, it's kind of like, well, I think the Cubs have a pretty good roster, and it's like a sign that, if they're looking to shop some guys, that we probably haven't done our job as players to put us in the best position. So just a little disappointed from that end, and we've played better since, which is great. Yeah, I mean, like going out and pitching the day before the deadline was just a little awkward, a little weird. I was walking out in Cincinnati and fans were like, it felt like they were yelling, oh, you're making your starter, you're going to get scratched. And, you're human, you hear some of that. So it was different. But obviously, like you said, like I bought a place in Chicago. I chose to be here. I want to be here. I want to see this through. I love the city. I love my teammates. So grateful to still be here.
Jameson, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, I want to touch on that a little bit more because your name was out there a lot, and it was out there with at least the Yankees, maybe the Mets, maybe the Red Sox, and I know you love Chicago. That's great that you have a spot there. I love Chicago too, and I know that your no trade list included teams that you really didn't want to go to. A lot of people put teams on there that are just the big teams that they can somehow get some money out of it, but you actually, I think, did the right thing and put teams that you didn't want to go to. So I think the New York teams were not on the list. What were your thoughts as you heard each one of those trade rumors? You've already been a Yankee. Were you okay with it if it was going to be the Yankees? Your hometown team, the Astros, was in the mix. What did you think of
Yeah.
that? And how did you react to all those different rumors that came out with the individual teams?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think first off with the no trade thing, that's something that can change every year for me. I get to select 10 teams. And early on in the deal, I kind of was just thinking I'd like to protect myself from places I'd rather not play. And then if you were to get traded to a contender or a great organization, like that's not the worst thing in the world. But now after going through this, like this offseason, I'll have to put my head together with my agent and see what we want to do. Yeah, I mean, like every team that was rumored to be interested was a good organization. And there were definitely pros and cons to everywhere. I loved playing for the Yankees. I loved living in New York. If you're not going to be in Chicago, like New York's a great spot to be. My wife loved it too. So yeah, I wouldn't say I was like overreacting or reacting at all to each rumor. But as a whole, it was like, not the worst case with the teams that were interested and kind of where they were at organizationally and stuff.
Jameson, you mentioned it. It is a limited no trade. You mentioned you and your wife have a house in Chicago. You put down some stakes here. Do you try to talk to Jed Hoyer or somebody in management and say, "Hey, can I make a case to stay? Can you keep me vested in?" And what are you doing as far as understanding what your situation is in real time with your management, with the management team of a team?
Yeah, so I actually really didn't do anything. I just viewed it as like they're doing their due diligence, they're doing their job. I think like my reputation within the clubhouse or the work I do on the field and in between starts and all that, like I think everyone would be aware of what I bring to the table or what I don't bring to the table. So I just feel like at that point, it's kind of like, what can I really do or say? And from what I gathered, it's like they wanted to keep me. It was just they were also doing their due diligence and seeing what was out there. So I think, certain people definitely would be on the phone and having those conversations. And for me, I kind of just choose to sit back and let it play out and just keep doing my job. I know it sounds like super cliche, but I mean, every day I show up to the field, I have a job to do. I got to get in the weight room. I got to do my throwing regardless of what's going on. And I just felt like, putting myself out there, putting myself, in the front office's shoes. And so I was like, I'm not going to do that. I just want to, show up, do my job, and join my teammates and let it happen.
Tell me about Chicago. I ran into you in the Christmas season. I actually walked right past you on Michigan Avenue. I said, wait a second, this guy's about 6'7", 6'8". I probably know him. And I looked back and said, oh, that's Jameson Taillon. So you're there in the winter too, I guess. At least I saw you in December.
Yep.
And what do you like about Chicago? And I know I'm the only New Yorker who prefers a deep dish pizza to New York pizza, but I thought I'd throw that question in there too. And Joel
Yeah.
doesn't like these multiple questions, but where do you
I can
stand
I
on
can
that?
answer them all. I can hit them all off.
You're good. You're smart. I
Wait, hold
know.
on. John had two more. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to be spending more time in Arizona this year just so I can get outside and throw a little more. But I was working out at Wrigley last year. It's a great. I mean, the renovation they did on the home side is pretty incredible. Our facilities are amazing. So I was in there doing my work in the off season, just enjoying it. I was kind of, traveling all over the place for weddings and my own wedding, but Chicago was our home base last off season, and like I said, we bought a place there. And around the Christmas season, it's great, but definitely Chicago in the summer. I know everyone says it, but Chicago in the summer is tough to beat. The amount of day games we play, you can go, experience the city, get a good dinner, get out on a boat. There's just so much going on. Last week there was the air show, and I had a great view of it out my window. That was pretty incredible. I was watching Blue Angels fly right by me. So it just feels like there's always something going on, and there's energy in the city. So yeah, that's the big one. I definitely enjoyed being there in the winter. The facilities are incredible, but I definitely need to be outside to throw a little more this off season. I need to put spikes on and put my feet in the grass and stuff like that.
And the
Jameson,
pizza,
yeah.
pizza.
Oh, so actually, I'm gonna get killed for this probably. I'm more of a New York style pizza guy. But in Chicago, they actually do like the tavern style, the really thin crust, like the
Yes.
cracker thin. That
Yeah.
would be my number one overall choice. It's just a little harder to find, but like when you get a good one of those, tough to beat.
They
I
have
knew,
that in New York too, downtown. But
yeah.
how about Lou Malnati? Have you been to Lou Malnati?
I've
You're
hit
not
just about everywhere. I think my
okay.
favorite is probably Pequod's right now in Chicago. And then in New York, I mean, that was like a fun thing to do in New York, after a dinner, walk around, or after a game, walk around the city, grab a slice. So yeah, I've tried a lot of them.
Jameson, I knew Heyman was going to ask the hard-hitting pizza question. So I didn't even have to write it down on like my piece of paper, remember the pizza questions. So why don't I see if we could get us back to baseball? The Cubs had an interesting trade deadline. There was some buying, there was some selling. Uh, as we sit here today, the team is still under 500, 59-61, 4 games out of the last wild card. What do you see? The team is +9 run differential. You mentioned there's some talent there. There's a quarter of a season left. What's the potential for the Cubs?
Yeah. So I mean, when I look at our roster and like where we're at, obviously we put ourselves in a tough spot. That being said, I know we can play with anyone in the league. So that's number one. We have starting pitching that keeps us in just about every game. If we're doing our job correctly, like 1 through 5 in the starting rotation, we should show up and be in a ball game. We play great defense. Our lineup's gotten healthier. We've gotten deeper. We added Paredes, so he's a super professional, fun at bat to watch. So we've got the pieces there, and we I feel like we're beating a dead horse, but it's like we have to go out there and play well consistently for a long period of time now to really crawl back into it, which I think we can do. But yeah, the number one thing is like when we show up, we know we have a starting pitcher who's going to give us a good professional effort. We play defense. Our lineup's gotten healthier and deeper. So yeah, I mean, I still think we have some life in us, and we've been playing a lot better over the last couple of weeks.
Now you're pitching tomorrow and facing the Guardians. You're in Cleveland as we do this. I mean, they've shocked me. I had no idea they were good. How are they so good?
Yeah, I mean, last night we took a hard loss, but it was a good baseball game. A lot of back and forth. So clearly they've got a lot of fight in them. It's a bit of a mix, and these teams can be dangerous where they have a ton of fight, ton of scrap, but also like some sneaky star power. Like you have Josh Naylor having a great year. You have Jose Ramirez doing what he always does. You have Stephen Kwan, who I think is one of the most underrated players in all of the major leagues. You have an elite back end of the bullpen. It's interesting for me. Like we don't see them much once a year now, and they roll guys out of the pen, and it's like, well, I'm not too familiar with what Cleveland's doing on the pitching side. And you see the numbers some of the guys have that are coming out of the bullpen, and you're like, well, it's no wonder they're in a pretty good spot right now. So yeah, the top of the lineup's pretty dang good. I really like Tanner Bybee and Gavin Williams. I'm a pitching nerd, so I do follow some of the other starting pitching. But yeah, I mean, they're running dudes out of the bullpen with some pretty elite stuff. They rolled out a lefty last night, Heron, who I wasn't familiar with his game, and he was up from the left side, 95, 96, with some good off speed. I know our hitters said he was pretty dang good. So yeah, it's a mix of that scrappiness with like the star power needed to change a game in a swing.
Yeah, I watched the end of your game last night and watching Clase again close a game. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how anyone even fouls a ball off against him. You mentioned you're a pitching nerd. If I could just jump back to the trade deadline, one of the trades you did make, Mark Leiter Jr. came to New York. Since he's in our backyard now, tell us about Mark Leiter, scouting report, what kind of guy, what kind of
Yeah.
pitcher?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, he's got the bloodlines. He's got baseball in his
Hmm.
family. So like when you're around him in the clubhouse and just off the field, like the dude just gets it. He's a big leaguer. He's a pro. He was raised around the game. So that's number one. Number two, he's got some edge to him. Like he wants to pitch the big moments. He wants to be out there, in the thick of it. You'll see him get pretty fired up. And then, from the pitching side, he's a dude who I feel like came up as a starting pitcher. He's got the pitch ability. He can backdoor cutter to a lefty. He can try to steal strikes early in the count with his curveball, and then it's no secret that his splitters is his bread and butter. So yeah, he got a lot of big outs for us here. I think he's going to be really good over there. He's going to settle in and get very big outs for a really good team. I was sad to see him go just because he's one of those guys who always talks pitching. He's always, interesting to talk to and fun to be around. But at the same time, like he definitely wants to be out there to get the job done.
Now you were a number 2 overall picks in the first round, second pick, right? Right after Harper and right before Machado, I think, right? So you
Yep.
must have been a fairly good high school player, I guess.
I
so
tell people I threw hard in high school. I threw hard in high school.
apparently you must have done something. But you've been through a lot of struggles, right? I mean, you had so many injuries, you had serious illness. Where do you feel? I mean, you must be pretty proud of yourself the way you've gotten through all of this and the way
Yeah.
things have turned out. If you're
Yeah.
feeling pretty pleased and content with the way things have gone,
Yeah.
ultimately.
It's an interesting question because, like you said, I was drafted between Harper and Machado. So, like, if you told me when I got drafted that my career wouldn't stack up to theirs or whatever in terms of WAR and all that, I'd be disappointed, I guess. But then whenever I signed my pro contract and I was 18 years old, I didn't know what to expect. You set out on this journey, and you can't dictate what you're going to do. You can set the goals for I want to get to the major leagues, at 21, or I want to do this, and that. I want to win Cy Young awards, and it's like nothing's ever going to go to plan whenever you do that. So I learned pretty quickly that sometimes your journey is your journey, and you can't control everything. You just got to make the most of every situation. And I think a lot of my struggles and my journey and my health stuff has like turned me into who I am today. But yeah, I'm definitely proud of the fact that I dealt with a lot. I've been through a lot, and I've found a way now. Like coming out of my second Tommy John surgery, I've made 29 starts, 32 starts, 29 starts, and I'm on track this year to make a good chunk of starts. So definitely proud of that, proud of the way I am in the clubhouse and how I interact with teammates and try to make people better around me and stuff like that. So, it's interesting. Like, I feel like I went from being a young guy and a prospect to now being like more of a veteran presence and stuff pretty quickly. It happens scary fast. Yeah, definitely, wish I could have stayed healthier at a younger age. Always going to be curious, just how good I could have been if I didn't get hurt when I was younger and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, proud of the career I've built and kind of where I'm at.
Jameson, a good lawyer is never supposed to ask a question he doesn't know the answer to, but I'm pretty positive that you are pals with Garrett Cole. Like that it hasn't
Yep.
changed at all since you left the team. You were together with the Pirates, obviously, you're together now.
Yep.
He's had an interesting year, not the kind of year he'd want after his Cy Young, because he had an extended injury where he was really worried early on what the elbow might
Yep.
be. Then it turned out to be a nerve. And he's trying to rediscover Garrett Cole, which is the unicorn in the sport.
Yep.
Durability, elite baseball understanding, pitching understanding.
Yeah.
You mentioned you're a nerd, pitching nerd. What are you hearing from him? What are you seeing in his journey to return to being Garrett Cole?
Yeah. Yeah. So I keep pretty good tabs on him. I talk to him after his outings. I love watching him pitch still. Yeah. So an interesting thing I feel like playing with Garrett is you realize from afar how good he is, but when you play with him and you're his teammate and you watch him pitch every fifth day and you see the work that goes into it, and you see like the stuff that he takes out there every fifth day as a starter is incredible for the workload that he does. So, he's expected to throw 105, 110 pitches a game. He's expected to be out there into the seventh inning, getting big outs. And you watch him every time out there, and it's like the fastball's always there. The stuff is always there. Like as his teammate in 2 years with the Yankees, I don't know if I ever saw him go out there and just like not have his A stuff, which is incredible. And I also feel like with the Yankees, and especially being Garrett Cole, I feel like you have a target on your back a little bit. Like people come into Yankee Stadium and they're facing number 45. Like they want to get you. And the fact that he does what he does while having a target on his back playing for the Yankees is pretty incredible to me. And then just back to the question about like this year, I feel like watching his last outing, he started getting a little bit more swing and miss. I thought the fastball's been ticking up. I think for me, when I watch him, when he's facing lefties and he's just absolutely blowing like 97, 98 on the outer rail on the black by lefties, that's a good sign for where he's at. But I think he's feeling good. I think he's starting to get back on track and get some traction going here. And just knowing Garrett again, like the human that he is, even when he struggles, he's diving into it more than anyone. He's examining the struggles. He's an honest self-evaluator. Like, he's going to figure it out. Just a dude you bet on. Like, he's going to figure it out. He's too good. He's too smart. He'll be there when they need him. So yeah, it has been interesting. I've seen him throwing the cutter a little bit more. I've seen him just from afar trying to kind of find his way a little bit. And then the last couple, I feel like he's starting to really gain some traction.
He's played for two pretty high-profile managers. Now the highest salaried manager, not like a ball player, but pretty good for a manager. What comes to mind if I ask you about Aaron Boone and Craig Counsell?
Yeah, Aaron Boone always has his players' backs. I always appreciated that. Also, just a good communicator, very honest, always down to have a very open, honest conversation, and just like sounds cheesy, but just like a good dude. Aaron Boone's a good human being. Like, he's a really good guy. I love playing for him. And then Craig Counsell, sneaky funny, very witty, but also just like for me, it feels like when I show up to the park, you have the smartest dude in the stadium in your dugout. And that's a cool feeling. He sees the game from an interesting lens, super sharp, but like I said, also funny, like played in the big leagues a long time, knows how to interact in a clubhouse, loves kind of just talking smack with the guys too. Like in spring training, I was really caught off guard by how funny he was and how he could command a room and stuff like that. And I think Craig's going to be great for us with the Cubs. The dude, he doesn't miss anything. He sees everything, super sharp, and it just feels like we've got the smartest guy on our team, which is cool.
If I could follow up on that, Jameson, you mentioned Boone having everyone's back. It's clearly a strength of his, which is, he'd rather like jump into quicksand with an anvil than say something negative about one of his players. Is it a modern player? Does he have to do that? Or are there times where a manager should publicly say, you're not hustling, you're not paying attention, you're not if the manager is in charge of less stuff, and one of them is the kind of temperature of the team, how the team plays, should there be times a manager goes public with it?
I don't know. So the thing with managers, I feel like a lot of the times you guys have been around a long time. You guys know, like they're having conversations behind the scenes. There's times last year I wasn't pitching well enough, and David Ross just straight up told me, he's like, "Look, we have your back. We want you out there, but like, we need strike one more. We need you to be deeper into games and stuff like that." But when he talked to the media, he would have my back and say he's seeing some really good things. But like these conversations were happening behind the scenes. And I think Booney's the exact same way. Like, he's not afraid to be honest with you and tell you how it is. I just think he sees every time he goes in front of the media as a chance to have a platform to back his players, and players see it. Like, players do see the interviews and they do watch the press conferences. So I just think for him, it's a way to instill some confidence. But at the same time, like, that doesn't mean these guys are soft or they're not having these conversations. Like, they do happen. I just think he doesn't feel the need to go out there and bash players. Maybe there is a time and place where it is the right move. If, you're having these conversations behind the scenes and nothing's changing, like maybe then it is time to say, like, this has to be better. And that's where it just comes down to like knowing your players and the temperature of the room and the locker room and stuff like that.
I know this is now a couple of years ago, but I'm always interested in how a free agency goes. Yours obviously worked out nicely for you. You got a 4-year deal. It seemed like you and Taijuan Walker signed almost simultaneously for about the same contract. Tell me about your free agency. Were you with any other teams, or the Cubs just blow people out of the water? And what teams were they?
Yeah, so free agency I got lucky. It was awesome. Like, I was really pleased with how it went. My agency was incredible through the whole process. I was actually living in New York at that time. My agency, Excel, is based out of New York, so I was able to go into the office, I wanted to be involved. I know some players are like, just tell me where I'm going, get me the most money. I wanted to be involved. I came up with a list. I wanted to see comparable players in past years and future years and what teams need starting pitching. Like I wanted to be super engaged. And I mean, they made me all sorts of charts and put it right in front of my face. I could go into the office and have these conversations. I wrote down the teams that, I was really interested in going to. And somehow we just manifested that it was really those teams that were pretty involved. I like playing in big markets. I like playing in front of fans and big games and big moments and bright lights and all that. So yeah, I mean, the Cubs were really in there from day one, and they made it clear to me that I was a serious priority. Some teams call, some teams jump out of nowhere and send offers or whatever. The Cubs were really the one team that were in on me from day one. They were the only team that I met with, like in person, face to face. Everything else was Zoom calls. The Cubs, took an effort to come meet with me, made a really cool video for me. And obviously, like I played in the NL Central. I know about Chicago. I know about Wrigley Field. I was playing against the Cubs when they were beating our butts and they were winning the World Series and stuff. And I got to see just how into baseball the city is and stuff. So Chicago was really high on my list from day one. There were other teams involved, but the Cubs to me, like seriously, just felt like from day one a great fit. And they really, sounds cheesy. Obviously, money matters, but also like when a team says you're our priority and they back it up and they stay engaged the entire time, that matters, and that mattered to me.
Jameson, as a way to wrap it up here, there's been a lot of conversation especially the last 10 days or so about baseball returning to the Olympics and major leaguers playing. You were a very young man. You have dual citizenship, US and Canada. You played in the WBC for Canada. Would you like to see the season? I guess maybe you need a 10-day pause or something in the middle. Maybe you got to go to 156 or 154 games for a year. What do you think 2028 LA, major leaguers, you on the mound for Team Canada if it got there?
That's a really hard question. I don't know about you guys, but I was super into the Olympics this year. Like it was
Yeah.
always on in our
Yeah.
locker room. Everyone was talking about it. Every sport. Like I think it's just such a cool way to highlight amazing athletes. Obviously, with us having Dansby on our team and having Mallory play for the women's
Oh yeah.
national team in soccer, like we were all super into it. So like from that lens, I wish there was a way to get major league players in the Olympics. And I mean, yeah, I got to play in the World Baseball Classic for Canada, and that meant a lot to my parents. It meant a lot to me too that Canada took a chance on me. I got to start against Team USA as a young 21-year-old. I think it's pretty special to represent a country. So I wish there was a way. I don't know how. I really don't know what the answer is, but I think players pretty overwhelmingly would want to play and represent their country for the Olympics. Like the World Baseball Classic's great. You see what it does for the game. You see the interest, the fans that come out, how much it means to every single country to be represented on a big stage. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not that smart, but I do wish there was a way. Like I think that'd be pretty cool. Um, and I think players would want to represent their countries.
You mentioned Mallory Swanson. Everybody, I'm sure, was way behind her. She also happened to score the winning goal. Were you guys able to watch those games all together, or I don't know what the timing of it was?
Yeah, so there were some times where it'd be early in the morning, and like if she scored, our team group text was going crazy. And it was cool to like recap the games with Dansby after. I mean, he really knows soccer. He's super into it, obviously. So it was fun to talk to him about the journey and the process, and even the behind the scenes stuff, like the travel they were going through and their schedules, and just how grueling soccer is. They're running all over the place, and it's a sneaky physical game. So that was cool just to hear the insights. And then I think there were a few games where we did get to watch at the field. Like we'd be sitting in the food room, all watching. I think it was maybe the game against Japan. Was that like the quarterfinals where we were all at the field watching? So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the Olympics would be great, but the easy answer, unfortunately, is 2028 LA. Everyone's in. 4 years later, I think it's in Australia. Will everybody be in to
Right.
travel there? I think that, it gets more complicated. As you remember, it's not always going to be US based. And then how long do you have to stop
Yep.
a season if it's in Australia, Asia, something like that? Because I think it would be great for the sport. I'm just
Yep.
wondering the ABC of it all.
Yep. And would teams let their top prospects go if they don't let major leaguers go? Like what? Yeah, I don't know the perfect answer, but I mean, I just think it would be so good for the game on that stage to be watched, on a national stage. I was getting into, people who've maybe never seen baseball before. It could be like me on the flip side. I was watching archery, volleyball. I was learning about the sports, and like if
Hey,
people from other countries can watch baseball like that, I think that'd be awesome.
Jameson, I've been to 4 Olympics, 3 summers. You cannot pull me away from team handball live. I
Yeah.
mean, and the thing about team handball is I'm not sure because it's running, throwing, catching, and physicality, why we don't take like our Division II basketball team and turn it into a handball team because we should dominate at that and we stink.
We had these conversations in the clubhouse. Like, what sport do you guys think you could, if you trained nonstop for 4 years, what sport do you think you could go play? And, the answers are all over the place, but it's just fun. And the conversation the Olympics brought. Yeah, I actually had a girl from my high school win a silver medal. So that was cool. She was in
Whoa.
synchronized diving, Cassidy Cook. Like, it was just super cool to follow everything. Yeah, I think handball would be a popular one. A couple guys said volleyball. If they trained for 4 years, maybe they could spike it hard. Water polo. Obviously,
Well,
these sports aren't that easy to just learn, but
everybody thinks they could play ping pong, and then you
oh,
go live
Forget
again,
it.
live and watch, and I go, oh, I wouldn't return a serve from any of these
yeah,
guys.
they're incredible.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
They are amazing. I got to ask you, this is archery. It bothered me when they would do the bow and the arrow. The wind could suddenly come up. I mean, it seemed unfair to me. I don't know. You play at Wrigley, you know about the wind. I don't know. It just didn't seem
Wrigley,
right.
we say Wrigley giveth and Wrigley taketh away. So it's
Yeah.
like just the way sports go. I mean, obviously on that stage you train for 4 years, and if you get screwed by a little wind gust, like that stinks. But
Yeah.
like at Wrigley, they show the exit velocity and everything on hits, and some days there's a home run that's hit 93 at 36 degrees or whatever, pull side. And then like Patrick Wisdom hit a ball 112 at 35 dead pull. And it was a fly out to the warning track because the wind was
Yeah.
coming in at 20 miles an hour. I gave one up this year to O'Neill Cruz at like 113 to the gap, and it was a fly out. So, but then you'll get screwed by, a soft pop up that gets out. So, you know what? I do think in a day where like stadiums across the league are getting more and more generic, hey, if you're not hitting, we move the fence in. If teams are hitting too much, we move it back. I think Wrigley's pretty cool where like it truly changes day to day. The sun, people lose balls in the sun and the wind and the cold weather versus the summer weather. It makes it pretty unique.
Well, Jameson, I know you didn't think at the beginning of this we were going to do pizza and archery, but here we are. John and I can't thank you enough. It was a real pleasure to have you on the show. Best of luck and help the rest of the season.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun talking.
We, of course, thank Jameson Taillon for going wherever we wanted to go there, just like he did when we covered him in New York. What an interesting, smart guy. We appreciate having him on, and great job, John, getting him for the show. John, hit or error?
I'm going to go error. You talked about the aggressive teams, the aggressive GMs earlier. The Pittsburgh Pirates have now lost 8 in a row. They made 2 moves, IKF, who we love personally, and Brian De La Cruz. De La Cruz is 6 for 38 with no extra base hits at this point. They've played their way out of it. It's what is it, August 13th or something like that? We're not even two weeks. Well, I guess today's 2 weeks past the deadline, and they're already done. I mean, come on, Pittsburgh, let's go, let's move on it. I understand the fans are all upset. The owner, they really gotta be a little more aggressive and spend a little bit more money. That's the main thing. More than blaming the GM, it's more above him at this point. they gotta be more aggressive and give themselves a chance.
Yeah, especially when you have the kind of starting pitching they have, led by Paul Skeens.
Yeah, they could be a threat, right?
Yes,
they could be
in
a
the way
threat.
that Seattle could be. I think we always have problems with Seattle. Like, when you have that kind of starting pitching, go the extra mile and get a couple of great offensive players, not just supplementary guys. John, I'm going to keep it to the Pirates, and I'm going to do a hit for. I really think we have a great NL Rookie of the Year battle coming right now. Between Skeens and Jackson Merrill in particular, but we didn't even ask Jameson Taillon about Shota Imanaga, who's having a terrific first season. here in the States. Mason Wynn is doing so well with the Cardinals. Tyler Fitzgerald has just blossomed with the Giants. He's as good a hitter as there's been in the second half of the season. But I will say, Skeen started late, and if he ends early, I don't think he should get this over Merrill, who was there from day one, had played 5 games in the minor leagues in the outfield, went and solved the problem in center field, has shown what a clutch player he is. I think he's got 5 either go-ahead or tying homers from the 8th inning on. It tied Mel Ott for the second most ever, and the first is Frank Robinson. Those are 2 Hall of Famers. Jack and Merrill, like Skeens, made the All-Star game. We talked a lot in like the margins here about AJ Preller. Traded a lot of prospects. He never traded Jackson Merrill, and I think Jackson Merrill is showing us why. And I think with all the buzz about Skeens, deservedly, he's been great. Started the All-Star game. Before his last start, he had really not had anything that even looked like an ordinary start. They'd all been tremendous. But I think right now the front runner for National League Rookie of the Year should be Jackson Merrill.
Yeah, I agree. We had that debate on the MLB network yesterday, as a matter of fact, and I took Jackson Merrill. I think I was just assigned it, so I'm not taking any credit here, versus Skeens. And the guy was put out in left field, even though he was a shortstop in the minors in spring training, because they had a deficit in the outfield. They didn't know, of course, that Profar would be, one of the best left fielders in baseball this year. Nobody thought that when he signed $1 million contract. They moved him over to center, and he's been good. The metrics are solid. He's got a great arm. He's been terrific. He hit all those home runs late. Tied Mel Ott. I think that's for guys 21 and under. But
you're right, John. You're right.
But it's still to be there with Mel Ott and Frank Robinson.
And that's do it at 21 or younger.
Pretty amazing.
Why I like him in this is in another year of the pitcher, he's hit as a rookie. We saw 2 more touted Jacksons, Churio and Holiday, have trouble early in the year. Jackson Holiday had to get sent back to the minor leagues. Churio started slow. Now both Holiday and Churio have also come on. Merrill's been great this year. He hasn't, in a year where it's hard to hit again, he's been tremendous. And so if I had to decide if it's neck and neck and I had to decide between a rookie hitter and a rookie pitcher, I think hitting is so hard in the sport right now, I'd give it to Merrill for that. It feels like another reason.
The everyday player always wins. I remember my first, this is nostalgic now. In 92, the first time I voted for Rookie of the Year, I had Dave Fleming up there. He was 17-10 with a 3.39 ERA. He got no support. The winner was Pat Listash. As we look back now, I don't know if we had OPS plus. He was a 99. He was a below average hitter. So I'm complaining about that vote in 1992. I know.
John,
it's a while ago.
Am I going to look it up? And Dave Fleming was actually 17-10 with a 3.39 ERA, and you just pulled that right out of.
He was, and I had him second. Nobody had him first. I should have had him first, probably. But Kenny Lofton was in the mix. Your
brain is still working pretty good if you're still pulling 17-10 and 3.39.
Yeah, but I can't tell you what I had for breakfast. The only reason I know is because I spilled some eggs on my shirt. Otherwise, I'd have no idea.
Well, we know one area we would fail in is getting up on the air. If it wasn't for our producers, Tommy Hogan and Jake Brown, we always appreciate all the help they give. The New York Post YouTube page, give us a view. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to a podcast, rate and review us. And John, we're in the home stretch. It's going to be fun. See if the Mets could find their way in. See if the Yankees could stay on top in the AL East. I hope everyone sticks with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.